Hey folks, the Red Scourge here, and welcome back to the channel. And also, welcome into the inaugural Idaho State Bengals Dynasty episode. If you didn't catch the sort of initial teaser, sort of hype video I made on the channel, released that I think a week or so ago, go check it out, it's pretty short. So this episode is just going to be us going over the Dynasty setup. We'll look at the roster. We'll set up the recruiting board real quickly, and I'll kind of explain the roster setup because it's a little bit different than I've normally done. So let's actually do that first. So if you watched that initial sort of preview video, I showed the sort of dynasty creation, and the overalls that were calculated for this team were incorrect. They were in the 70s, and I didn't realize after doing all this roster editing that I had to go back and change that. I think as once we sim into week one, it changes what the averages are and everything, but it's way lower. This is going to be by far the worst team in the FBS ratings wise. So what I did is I started editing the entire roster to match, as far as I could, the Idaho State 2022 roster, because that's where I could find a depth chart. A local newspaper from Pocatello released a week one depth chart for 2022. So I went with that because I got to know like who's a little bit better, who's a little worse. The ratings are a total crapshoot. I had to do my best there. I'm not one of these sort of big time ratings guys like on the Operation Sports crew. I just went in and changed names. Definitely changed the stats, but heights, weights, hometowns, and all that. So I started doing the full roster. So Tyler Vanderwall's currently their starter. Got Mikey Zelli, who's actually related to one of y'all subscribers, so I made sure to keep him in there. And Hunter Hayes, so they'll be battling it out for backups. So as I went through, it was taking so much time to edit all these rosters. And I wanted this to be a challenge. So, what I wound up doing as I got a little bit deeper. Oh, and as a side note, this guy's listed, they're all listed as running backs on the roster. No one's listed as a fullback or anything. I think they're running, Idaho State in real life is running spread right now. So he's one of the tailbacks I moved to fullback because I need to be back for triple option. So it'll be rough. He's a pretty low overall, but he's a running back. He can run with the ball. So this roster is definitely a little bit rough. It took a lot to edit down the overalls. The base roster was Charlotte, and they're one of the lower rated teams in Revamped, but it took forever to get their ratings to drop. So they're actually not as bad as I would have liked. Um, but something I did do, this I think is all current. Once I got into the linemen, I started to realize how much time was taken. I mean, man, this took 5, 6 hours to get the roster here. So what I wound up doing is I took the guys that were seniors and starting and basically dropped their overalls. So they're just going to graduate. It's essentially like cutting those players. And the younger guys, I just dropped their overalls as much as I could. Um, so you'll see as we get into this roster, most of these guys are underclassmen. Yeah, so this guy's basically cut. And so it's just going to force me to recruit more, maybe take some walk ons, because I didn't want to sim through the first season and then cut guys. It felt like kind of a mess. So this is what we're working with. I will note, in case there happens to be anyone that's a real big Idaho State fan or big Sky fan, the guys that are seniors that are essentially getting cut, these are names of Charlotte players. I didn't change them, but the rest of the players are actual Idaho State players, and I followed that depth chart as best I could, except with the seniors. So it's going to be a young team. I didn't want to do like a death penalty dynasty. If you've been following this channel for a long time, I did a very short-lived Miami death penalty dynasty back in the day before it was kind of like a popular thing to do. And I didn't continue much past one season with it, but the channel was a lot smaller and wasn't Wasn't really gaining that kind of steam. So yeah, what can I say? This roster's rough. Going to be doing a lot of recruiting. We'll talk about recruiting rules and all that in a moment. Decent depth at corner. I mean, if you want to call this depth. But yeah, all these dudes down here, they just basically, I just need them off the roster to make it harder. I'm going to try to run 4-2-5. I don't know, with a roster like this, it won't matter too much, but I'm used to a lot of the 4-2-5 plays. I can be a little bit more successful with blitzing off the edge. You're not going to get four-man pressure with a team that's bad very often. And so that's it. It's pretty rough, but it's not the worst. Like I said, I would have made it even worse, but it took me forever to drop those ratings to that point, and I'm not up enough on the sort of the ratings balancing to know how much I'm really screwing up these players. We will take a quick look at what I'm using here for settings. Obviously on Heisman, I always play on Heisman. Quarter length, I usually play 5 minutes unless I'm going to be simming some stuff. Speed threshold apparently is best at 32, so I just kind of leave it there. And then these are just J-kit sliders. I believe the only change I've made to the sliders are QB accuracy at 5 instead of 0. And that's sort of a quality of life thing for me. You still really have to warm up your QB. I sometimes don't have a good time when it's just set at 0. All right, so we're actually going to set up our schedule before doing recruiting. We are playing as an independent year one. I didn't want to screw things up too much. I've had some issues with setting teams in conferences that they weren't originally in. And so I might do that year two. We might join Mountain West or something like that. I don't really like the look of the schedule to start off with. I definitely want a week one opener so I can start to get some coach XP so I can scout players. We are not playing Michigan. Like, that is not happening. Let's see, week one, we kind of get our pick. Boise State, do we just open? Do we just open against Boise State? They're set as our rival. They're kind of a dormant rival with Idaho State. They don't really play anymore, but their main rivals, Idaho and Weber State, are not in the game. And man, it took me so long to create this team. I've been referencing on this channel for quite a while, and it's only now finally done. So I'm not gonna create those teams. Maybe we'll start against someone slightly easier, and then week two, when we have a better idea of how this team plays, we can play our big rival. That's the thing about Revamped, is a lot of these teams there's a lot more parity. We'll play James Madison. That might be our best shot at getting a win. Yeah, none of these are like world beaters, but we're just playing like the entire American Conference. I don't really want to play Cincinnati. We'll play Boise week two. We're gonna go with that. We're actually not gonna redshirt anyone this year. We're gonna need everyone we have. Well, I've got my recruiting board all set up. And so what we're going to do for recruiting restrictions starting out is that I can recruit anyone in the state of Idaho. I usually do that with the home state, just makes sense. Idaho also doesn't have a lot of players, so I think that's fair. I can also recruit anyone 3 stars and lower that are interested coming in, or in general. If they're, they've got Idaho State in their top 10, I can recruit anyone 3 stars and lower. And anyone 3 stars and lower in pipeline states. So right now that's just really California. And also any 1-star players that I want to recruit across the country and Canada, I can do that as well. And so the reason I have that little caveat about interested players is that that's really just for season 1. If we take a look at interested players here, we got a bunch of 4-star guys, and this school should not be recruiting 4-star guys or have anyone interested that are that well rated in Idaho State. basically they're interested in coming to UNC Charlotte because that's the team I replaced, and that's where they think they're going in sort of a fictional sense in this game, the way the game's programmed. So next year we'll have guys that are interested in the school that's a little bit more accurate to how the school is. We're far and away the worst rated school in the FBS, and that's okay. That's kind of how we like it. So let's take a quick look at the board. With my coach just starting out, I've just got 1 point, so 20% scouting to start off. So we're not even going to bother looking at that. But yeah, some guys in Idaho that are a lot better than we really deserve, that aren't interested at all. We put them on the board pretty early, and we're going to see what we can do to scoop them up. These overalls are not indicative at all of their rating. As you can see here, 20% scouted doesn't really give you a decent idea of what they're going to be overall. But we definitely have, some needs to fill. That would be 1 B-back, 1 center, 2 defensive tackles, 1 free safety, 1 strong safety. This guy, I believe is interested. Yeah, he's not what I'm looking for in a B-back, but at this point, I just need bodies that are going to be better than walk-ons right now. But hey, this dude out of Elizabethton, Tennessee, really, really wants to come to Idaho State. No real big surprises. Although, you never know with some of these guys. Some of these 3 stars are going to be busts. That's okay. We might still recruit them. If they're in the 60s, it might be worth it. Yeah, it's 6'5" receiver. That could be good. Oh, I don't have any points left. If his strength is decent, well, it's a D, so you never know actually where it is. But I'm hoping he'll be a decent blocker for the option. And honestly, we might have to totally abandon the option if it doesn't work. We're probably not going to be able to run the ball very well in year 1, which is, that's common if you start with a really bad team with the option. I've found it's very hard to run the ball, but what's nice is there are a lot of really great passing concepts out of flex bone and some of the accompanying formations, so the passing offense isn't an issue. So we might accidentally be pass heavy. Like, I'm always going to try to run, but we might have to go to the pass. The reality of NCAA 14 and, by extension, College Football Revamped is it's a lot easier to pass in this game than it was in previous games. And I tend to think it's easier to pass than to run, just, on balance. I will say if our coach gets fired at the end of this year, I'm just going to use the editor and reassign him to this team because this game doesn't really account for teams that are really, really bad. If you've ever done Death Penalty Dynasty, it's very hard to win games, and if you only win, 1 game or 0 games in your first year, you typically get fired. So that's all I got for y'all this time. I'm hoping to come back with the week 1 video a little bit quicker than this. I had some technical difficulties with my mod files. I had all of my Idaho State files in there, and then when I did that Kibby Dome video, I did something weird when I moved the modded files out of my USDIR folder and then put them back in. There was something that didn't work right, and there was a bunch of stuff that was messed up. And so I'm basically to start from scratch as far as loading those files. So it's taken a while to get to this point. I'm actually still loading them in. This isn't complete. I just have enough of them done to make this look like Idaho State. So I appreciate y'all checking out the video and everything else on this channel, and I'll see you next time.